Ever watched a movie so disturbing you couldn't believe it got made, only to realize it's actually a masterpiece? The 1980s were packed with practical effects, wizards and directors who didn't understand the word limits. But hidden beneath the sanitized blockbusters were films that crossed every line audiences thought existed. These weren't just horror movies, they were nightmares that refused to be forgotten. Today we're counting down 11 horror sci-fi movies from the 80s that went way too far. The films that traumatized audiences, pushed practical effects to disgusting extremes, and somehow became beloved classics. Lifeforce, 1985. Tobe Hooper made a space vampire movie with a $25 million budget. Naked alien woman drains life force from victims who become zombies, spreading plague through London. Bodies explode into dust. Sexual energy becomes literal vampirism. Mathilda May stays nude for almost the entire film, and it bombed spectacularly. Canon Films gave Hooper ridiculous budget to make insane sci-fi horror hybrid. The result was too weird for mainstream, too sexual for horror fans, too expensive to justify the poor returns. Patrick Stewart appears in infamous scene kissing another man while possessed. The film has everything: space vampires, zombie apocalypse, nudity, apocalyptic destruction, and zero restraint. Lifeforce failed commercially, but gained cult appreciation for its absolute madness. It went too far in every direction simultaneously. Too sexual, too violent, too weird, too ambitious. That excess is exactly what makes it fascinating decades later. Hooper made beautiful disaster that couldn't succeed but refuses to be forgotten. Deadly Spawn, 1983. Ultra-low-budget creature feature made for under $25,000 by amateur filmmakers. Alien spawns in a basement and breeds rapidly. The creatures are all teeth and hunger. A mother gets eaten at the breakfast table while her family watches. The teenage son uses his knowledge of biology to fight back. The gore is excessive and impressively realized. Teenage special effects artists created the alien creatures using mostly household materials and determination. The production values are amateur, but the practical effects are shockingly professional. The spawns look genuinely disgusting, and the violence is brutal for such a tiny budget. The film proves passion and creativity matter more than money. Deadly Spawn went too far for its budget and somehow pulled it off. Theatrical distributors wouldn't touch it. Home video made it cult classic among gore fans who appreciated the ambition and practical effects craftsmanship. It remains proof that you can make effective horror without studio resources if you're willing to get your hands bloody. Xtro, 1982. British alien abduction film that makes Alien look restrained. A man abducted by aliens returns 3 years later through the most disturbing birth scene in cinema history. He impregnates a woman at a roadside. She gives birth to a full-grown man covered in slime and blood, who kills her in the process. The film gets weirder from there. The returned father has alien powers. His son develops powers too. A toy clown comes to life and kills a woman by suffocating her. Action figures become soldiers that murder people. The sexual undertones are deeply uncomfortable. The violence is graphic and bizarre. Xtro was too weird and grotesque for mainstream success. Some countries banned it outright. The VHS cover became infamous with the woman screaming while giving birth to an adult man. Cult following developed through home video rentals among fans seeking the most disturbing films possible. Xtro delivered disturbing content and crossed lines other films wouldn't approach. It went way too far, and that's its entire appeal. Re-Animator, 1985. Stuart Gordon adapted H.P. Lovecraft's Herbert West story as comedy horror with extreme gore. Jeffrey Combs plays medical student who creates serum to reanimate dead tissue. The results are violent, grotesque, and darkly funny. A cat comes back wrong. corpses in the morgue resurrect as violent monsters, and that decapitated head scene is absolutely notorious. The film balanced humor with genuinely disturbing imagery. Herbert West is a brilliant sociopath who sees corpses as experiments, not people. The intestines attacking people. Dean Halsey's tragic resurrection and transformation. The finale in the morgue with dozens of reanimated corpses fighting. Every scene pushed boundaries further. The most controversial scene involves a severed head committing assault. It's deeply disturbing despite the film's comedic tone. Re-Animator crossed lines gleefully, and audiences loved it for refusing to play safe. It became instant cult classic that launched Combs' career and proved horror comedy could be extreme and successful simultaneously. Gordon knew exactly how far to push before breaking. Society, 1989. Brian Yuzna made class warfare allegory where rich people are literal body horror monsters. A teenage boy discovers his wealthy family and their social circle are inhuman creatures who consume the poor through process called shunting. The finale is 20 minutes of bodies melting, fusing, and absorbing each other in grotesque orgy. Screaming Mad George created effects so extreme the film couldn't get wide theatrical release. Bodies turn inside out. Flesh becomes liquid and reforms. People merge into single writhing mass. A man's face gets pulled inside out through his head. The imagery is surreal nightmare that burns into memory permanently. Society went so far beyond acceptable that distributors buried it. Limited theatrical run, mainly home video distribution. The satire about rich literally feeding on poor becomes visceral body horror that makes metaphor uncomfortably literal. The shunting sequence remains one of most disgusting practical effects showcases ever filmed. Yuzna made something so extreme it influenced almost nothing because nobody else dared go that far. Cult classic because it's genuinely unforgettable. From Beyond, 1986, Stuart Gordon adapted another Lovecraft story about scientists stimulating their pineal glands to see creatures from another dimension. The stimulation also transforms their bodies in increasingly grotesque ways. Jeffrey Combs and Barbara Crampton star in film that's hornier and weirder than Re-Animator. Dr. Pretorius transforms into biomechanical monster, with extending pineal gland that eats brains. The S and M leather bondage imagery is explicit. Barbara Crampton's character becomes addicted to the stimulation which has sexual overtones. The creatures from beyond are slimy, phallic, and disturbing. The eye-eating scene is revolting. The body transformations are extreme. From Beyond was too sexually bizarre for mainstream horror audiences. The combination of gore, body horror, and sexual content pushed it into cult status rather than wide success. Gordon and Yuzna understood Lovecraft's themes of forbidden knowledge and cosmic horror, but added sexual transgression and visceral effects. The film went too far into weird sexual body horror territory for comfort. That discomfort is exactly what makes it memorable and disturbing decades later. Hellraiser, 1987. Clive Barker adapted his novella The Hellbound Heart into film about sadomasochistic demons from hell. Pinhead and the Cenobites, explorers in the further regions of experience, drag victims to dimension of pleasure and pain indistinguishable. Frank escapes hell and needs blood to regenerate his body. The skinless Frank resurrection sequence is grotesque. Julia murdering men to feed Frank's regeneration. Hooks and chains ripping flesh. The Cenobite's appearance with pins in face, throat slit, wounds exposed. We have such sights to show you becomes threat and promise. The sexual violence and sadomasochism were explicit for horror film. Hellraiser was too extreme for mainstream, but found passionate audience among horror fans wanting something genuinely transgressive. Barker created new horror mythology mixing sexuality, pain, pleasure and damnation. Pinhead became instantly iconic despite minimal screen time. The practical effects were brutal and effective. The film launched massive franchise, but nothing matched the original's willingness to embrace disturbing imagery and themes. Barker went too far into darkness and created masterpiece, The Fly, 1986. David Cronenberg remade the 1958 B-movie as slow-burn body horror tragedy. Jeff Goldblum plays scientist whose teleportation experiment fuses his DNA with a fly at molecular level. The transformation isn't quick. That's what makes it unbearable. We watch him decompose in excruciating detail while he's still conscious and aware, the fingernails falling off, the teeth coming loose in his mouth, his ear dropping into the bathroom sink, coarse hairs pushing through lesions in his skin, the vomit digestion scene where he dissolves a donut with digestive enzymes and slurps up the liquefied remains. Chris Walas's practical effects are so detailed and realistic, they still turn stomachs 40 years later. The telepod baby nightmare where Gina Davis gives birth to Giant Maggot. The final transformation into Brundlefly, barely human anymore with insect eyes and mandibles. Then, Davis has to decide whether to mercy kill the thing that was the man she loved. Cronenberg used body horror to explore disease, decay, and watching someone you love die slowly. AIDS crisis allegory made visceral and devastating. The Fly went too far into graphic biological horror and became masterpiece about mortality itself. Scanners, 1981. David Cronenberg made psychic warfare film where telepaths, scanners, can control minds and explode heads. The opening sequence shows Michael Ironside making a man's head explode from inside. Real materials were used for the effect. Skull fragments, brains, and blood spray everywhere in conference room. It's still one of cinema's most shocking moments. Corporate conspiracy uses scanners as weapons. The psychic battles are visualized as physical torture. Veins bulge, eyes bleed, noses hemorrhage. The violence when telepaths fight is brutal. Dick Smith's special effects made the mental warfare tangible and grotesque. The low budget sometimes showed, but the ambition and gore carried it through. The final duel between brothers is body horror extreme. One scanner takes over the other's body, burning out his own in the process. Scanners went too far with graphic head explosion and made it iconic. The film launched Cronenberg's career in body horror and proved audiences would accept extreme violence if the concept and execution were compelling enough. Every exploding head in film since owes debt to Scanner's groundbreaking practical effects. Videodrome, 1983. Cronenberg's most insane body horror about television signal that causes hallucinations and tumors. James Woods plays cable programmer who discovers Videodrome. Broadcast showing real torture and murder. The signal transforms his body. His stomach opens into vaginal slit that accepts videotapes. His hand fuses with gun made of flesh and bone. Television sets pulse and breathe like living organs. Debbie Harry's body splits open during hallucination. Woods pushes his entire head inside a breathing television screen. A whipping scene shows bodies merging and splitting. Reality breaks down completely. The audience never knows what's real or hallucination caused by tumor in Woods' brain. Long live the new flesh becomes mantra for fusion of human and technology. Cronenberg explored media violence, corporate manipulation, and how technology invades bodies and minds. The body horror is relentless and specific. Rick Baker's practical effects created images that burrow into memory and never leave. Videodrome went so far into surreal nightmare territory that it's still confusing and disturbing 40 years later. Nothing else looks or feels like it. Cronenberg at peak madness creating horror that's still ahead of its time. The Thing, 1982. John Carpenter made body horror masterpiece that bombed because it opened 2 weeks after E.T. audiences wanted cute, friendly aliens. Carpenter gave them parasitic shapeshifter that imitates and consumes. Rob Bottin's practical effects remain unsurpassed 4 decades later for creating genuinely alien and horrifying transformations. The dog kennel scene where the thing transforms is pure nightmare. Bodies splitting open, tentacles erupting from flesh, heads detaching and sprouting spider legs. The chest defibrillator scene where the torso opens into mouth with teeth and bites off arms. Every transformation is different, unpredictable, and grotesquely creative. Nothing looked like this before or since. The blood test scene is unbearable tension. The autopsy revealing fused organs. Palmer's transformation in the kennels. Blair's final form in the underground spacecraft. Amalgamation of multiple bodies fused into spider creature. The practical effects aged perfectly, while CGI from the 90s looks dated. The nihilistic ending offers no hope or victory. The thing went too far for 1982 audiences who called it disgusting and pointless. Critics destroyed it. Box office bombed. Carpenter's career never fully recovered. But time proved it's the greatest horror remake ever made. The practical effects craftsmanship is unmatched. The paranoia and isolation themes are perfect. CGI still can't replicate the tactile horror of Bottin's work. The thing went furthest and became untouchable masterpiece. Which movie went too far for you? Which practical effect still makes you queasy? Which one are you brave enough to watch tonight? Drop your answer in the comments below. Hit subscribe for more extreme cinema and boundary-pushing horror, and smash that like button if you survived any of these films and still have nightmares about what you saw.